How many times in your life do you think you've been the fool going through the fool's journey? Hi there, and welcome to Beyond the Shuffle, a podcast where we explore this wild ride of the human experience through the lens of tarot. I'm Adrienne Amari, your host, guide, and lover of stories. So settle in, open your mind, and let's go beyond the shuffle. Have you ever heard of the Major Arcana being called the Fool's Journey? This is a really normal, I guess, or a helpful way of looking at the Major Arcana as we follow the Fool on his journey from being a fool to completion and integration. And the Fool's journey or the hero's journey is something we see time and time again in different stories and in literature. One of my favorite examples is Star Wars. We have our young Luke Skywalker who starts off the fool, knowing nothing. And of course, by the end, he's a Jedi Master. And we all know the progression. We get the fool who leaves home to start off on their quest. There are plot twists and changes, and they have to go through a dark night of the soul. And then they awaken, and they come home or come back, or they complete their goal. And it's not always a straightforward, easy progression. And this is something we all go through in our lives time and time again. We've been the fool many times, and I'm sure we all will be many more. And I mean that in the most wonderful of ways. But I thought it would be a fun story to talk about for today's episode. So let's start at the very beginning with number 0, the Fool. And when we meet the Fool, they just look so innocent and so carefree. They're walking near the edge of the cliff, not looking where they're going, their little dog nipping at their heels, sack slung over their shoulder. The sky is bright, the sun is shining. They can feel the rays beating against their face. There's a purity to the Fool card. They don't really know where they're going, and there's a part of them that doesn't really care. They'll figure it out as they set out on this new adventure. Some may say there is foolishness or folly in that, but I prefer to look at it as optimism. They're not held back by their insecurities, their questions, or their fear. They want to experience life, and so with that, they take a blind leap of faith and step off the cliff. And the brilliant thing is that the Fool does not plunge to their death. Instead, they land in the material world, in reality, and their journey begins. So they don't really know what's going on. They have to figure out how this all works. And that's when they meet the magician, standing at a table, roses around them, tools laid out before them. Curious, the Fool approaches. They watch as the magician raises one hand to the heavens and the other to the earth. There's an electric energy that comes from this character. And as the Fool watches, the magician tells him, look at the table. You aren't going forth empty-handed. You have your thoughts, your emotions, your passion, and the material world around you. You have the power to manifest whatever reality you choose. And so the Fool sits and learns. He learns the power of willpower and intention and utilizing the resources available to you. And he feels powerful. He feels like maybe he can do this. So he takes his tools and he moves forward. But unfortunately, just embodying the conscious realm can become really chaotic. So while the Fool walks away from the magician's table, he finds himself moving towards a quiet, shadowed temple. He finds a beautiful high priestess sitting between two massive pillars, one black and one white. She's sitting perfectly still, breathing deeply, and the Fool can see a scroll half hidden in her robes. She doesn't speak aloud, but somehow she communicates. And the Fool understands that while we have outward power, we also have power within. That we can't fear the mystery or the silence, and that we need to trust the whisper of our own intuition. It is the balancing act of the conscious, the subconscious mind. And while they might not be able to understand the mechanics, the Fool accepts this as the truth. They know that they have felt things in the pit of their stomach without reason, without explanation. And they understand that both elements are important: the conscious, intentional, powerful action, the gentle, receptive, mysterious intuition. So equipped with both worlds, the Fool continues down the path, and they meet more earthly guides. They first wander into a lush, sun-drenched field of wheat, where, sitting comfortably on a plush cushion, they see the beautiful Empress. The Fool has never seen anyone that radiates such beauty so naturally. And the Empress welcomes the Fool with open arms, allowing them to rest their feet, drink from the nearby river, and teaches them about unconditional love, the beauty of the physical senses, creativity, and abundance. And the Fool learns what it feels like to be nurtured and safe. They relish in the ground beneath their feet and understand what it means to be nourished with comfort and love. But the Fool realizes that they cannot stay there forever. They need to grow. They need to keep going. So they bid farewell to the Empress and her garden, walking down the pathway towards a large castle. Entering the castle, it feels cold and rigid, especially compared to the warmth of the fields they had just left. Sitting on a cold stone throne carved with ram heads in the sides, the Fool sees the Emperor. He sits tall and strong, with a stern expression on his face. The Fool notices the armor poking out from underneath his robes. He's ready for anything, the Fool thinks. He stares down the Fool and finally speaks. Love is beautiful, but without order there is chaos. You need boundaries, laws, logic, and self-discipline if you're going to survive in this world. And the Fool looks around at the kingdom the Emperor has built. It stands strong. It protects its people. And the Fool understands. We need both the gentle, receptive, feminine energy of the Empress and the more rigid, protective energy of the Emperor. So the Fool wanders around the castle, seeing people mill about, doing their jobs, carting vegetables here and there. Maybe there are horses and children playing in the streets. And the Fool feels a little bit lost. They're not sure where they fit. They don't have a role or a job. They're just kind of there. And as these thoughts cross their mind, they notice a church. So they enter the vast sacred hall, and following the queue of others, they join them at kneeling before the Hierophant. The Fool listens as the Hierophant speaks. Those around him nod in agreement and understanding. The Fool looks around and notices that people are all doing the same thing. There is a tradition here. There's convention. They're drawn here to listen to the wisdom of the Hierophant, this collective belief system of the culture they live in. The Fool learns the importance of community because it feels good to be there learning with others, of shared rituals and the rules of how to exist. Because the Fool notices that everyone kind of falls in line, and they're not going to be the one that makes a scene. And so the Fool learns what they can. They participate in the hymns. They rise when they're asked to, and they kneel again when everyone else does. And while it feels good to be part of something, the Fool's ready for more. They're ready to learn and to explore. So they take their leave. And as they're walking through the streets, they start to really think about what the Hierophant was saying. They wonder if they really agree with all the rules that were stated, with all the beliefs that were shared. And before long, the Fool finds themselves in a beautiful courtyard garden, with a man and woman standing naked as anything, and above them, an angel blessing the scene. This is a very unorthodox thing to stumble across, and the Fool can't help but stop and stare. There's no teacher or parent around them to tell them to close their jaw. And so they choose to move forward to learn more about what's going on. The lovers smile and welcome the Fool in, and they can tell how closely connected these two beings are. They're hiding nothing. And they're choosing who they are and their personal truth over conforming to what everyone else around them thinks they should be doing. Perhaps their families don't understand their relationship. Perhaps their friends don't get the connection. But the lovers still choose each other because they feel like themselves when they're together. And the Fool realizes that they too can choose. They can choose the direction they want to go. They can choose the person that they want to be. And they realize that they're ready for a bigger world. So he heads down to the stables where he meets the chariot. The charioteer helps the Fool step into the driver's seat. And immediately the Fool is pulled into two opposing directions by each sphinx, one black and one white. The charioteer tells the Fool that they need to decide what direction they're going in. They need to take control of the reins. So using their willpower, they steer the animals into the same direction. Together they charge forward out of the city gates, triumphant and full of youthful ego. There's a little bit of anxiety swelling up in the Fool's stomach as they realize they're leaving the comforts of the castle behind. But as they look out over the horizon, they know that nothing can stop them. The Fool feels like they've reached a level of success. They've done it. They're out in the big wide world. But as we know, life isn't always that easy, is it? And not long after, in the middle of the path, the Fool comes across a fierce lion. They jump out of the chariot, thinking that the only way forward is to conquer the beast. But then they see the maiden, gentle in robes of pure white, crowned with flowers. She has no sword. Instead, she gently and lovingly places her hands on the lion's jaws, closing them with a soft touch. The lion licks her hand, completely tamed. It even lets out a little bit of a purr. And the Fool stops in their tracks. This makes them realize a profound truth. True strength isn't aggression or dominance. Had they fought that lion, they would have surely come out rougher on the other side. There's another way. There's gentleness, quiet fortitude, patience, and the capacity to love our own wild animalistic instincts into submission. And suddenly the Fool who thought they had it all figured out feels humbled. They need a moment just to think. And so they continue on off the beaten path, which takes them higher and higher into the cold mountains. Snow starts to fall and darkness starts to settle. But at the end of the path, the Fool sees the hermit standing at the peak, cloaked in a heavy gray robe, holding a single starlit lantern. The Fool moves closer, but the hermit does not speak. Together, they sit in the silence of solitude. The Fool feels their mind running with all the different thoughts, but they also feel themselves asking questions, going within, introspection. The hermit doesn't offer advice or give the Fool opinions, and this lets the Fool actually think. And through this, the Fool understands that the answers they seek can't be found in a book or a crowd. They can only be found within. The Fool smiles and nods gently to the hermit. They understand each other even though no words were spoken. And the hermit knows that it's time for the Fool to continue on their journey because they cannot stay on the mountain forever. He bids the Fool well as he watches them descend down the mountain and back into the reality of the world. And as the Fool traverses the path, the ground beneath them begins to violently spin. They grab their head, feeling dizzy, not knowing which way is up or which way is down. And above them, floating in the sky, is a massive celestial wheel covered in symbols and mythical beasts. The Fool may not understand it at first, but this is the Wheel of Fortune, and the Fool is swept up into its rotation. One moment they're at the top and they feel blessed and successful, and the next the wheel spins and they're plunged into the mud at the bottom. Their stomach does somersaults, and no matter how hard they try, they can't stop this wheel from spinning. As they spin, they can see the seasons changing before their eyes, the rising and the falling of the sun. And through this, the fool learns the brutal, beautiful law of impermanence, that life is cyclical, that change is the only constant, and that so much of the time, the only thing that you can control is yourself. And when the realization clicks, the wheel stops spinning. The fool is gently placed back on 2 feet on the ground, a little worse for wear. And almost as if the wheel brought them there, they find themselves in a stone room, seated on a throne between 2 pillars, holding a massive double-edged sword in one hand and a perfectly balanced set of scales in the other, is Justice. Justice looks into the fool's soul with unblinking objectivity. She has no emotion on her face, only truth and cause and effect. She hands the fool a mirror and says, "Look at your life. You are exactly where your choices have brought you. Every action has an equal reaction. Own your truth, accept responsibility, and cut away the illusions." And the fool sits and they think. They think about the choices they've made. They think about leaving the castle. They feel the heat rise on their cheeks as they feel embarrassed for even momentarily thinking they had this all figured out. And they know that to align with balance, this cosmic balance, they need to realize that their actions have consequences. They need to be fair and just, and they need to realize that at the end of the day, it was the choices they made and a little bit of ego that got them where they are, good or bad. And with that thought in mind, the fool bids Justice farewell. And as they walk along the path, it feels like time stops. The wind stops blowing, the clouds stop moving, the birds stop singing in the trees. And as they look to the left, they see a hanged man hanging from a tree. The fool looks at him quizzically and decides to do the same. Maybe there's something to it. He doesn't look uncomfortable, so why not try? The fool copies the hanged man's pose. Upside down by 1 foot, knee bent, and hands bound behind their back. And as the fool gets into place, they realize it's not so bad. The world looks so different from up here and upside down. He looks over at the hanged man and notices a yellow aura around his head and wonders if they have the same. And the fool just hangs. Their heartbeat calms and the path ahead becomes more clear. While they had originally been worried about wasting time, they realized that this pause gave them the way forward that they need. And because they have surrendered, the inevitable transformation can finally take place. The fool releases themselves just as the air grows cold and the sky turns gray, and riding on a pale horse comes death. Now death was something that the fool was taught to fear, and he wears black armor, his face a skeletal grin. And death stops for no one, trampling kings and commoners alike. But the fool knows that this is not the time where his body is leaving him. He can feel that it's the end of a cycle. He can feel his old identity, his old ego, his old coping mechanisms fading away. And everything that they thought they were burns to ash, leaving only a blank canvas. It wasn't as painful or scary as the fool thought it might be. They actually feel refreshed on the other side because out of the smoking ash of loss, a beautiful, gentle light emerges. And before them, they see an angel with great wings standing by a flowing stream, pouring water from one cup to the other. The action is calm and soothing, and the fool feels their heart settling. They move closer to Temperance, and the angel touches the fool's weary soul and teaches them the art of alchemy, of patience and moderation, where the fool realizes that the gung-ho, willpower-driven push of the chariot, while it got them outside their comfort zone, it needed to be tempered. The fool heals. They learn how to blend the opposites within themselves, the light and dark, the action and rest, the masculine and the feminine, creating a peaceful, harmonious middle path. And so the fool walks this middle path, feeling sure-footed and serene. But it's not long before they take a wrong turn and stumble into a dark, suffocating cavern. Looming over them in the shadows is the devil. He sits perched on a stone block, a burning torch in hand, laughing at the fool. Chained to his pedestal are two figures, half human, half beast, and the fool almost recognizes them. But before they can work it out, they look down and realize they too are wearing a heavy iron collar and are chained in the dark. This is the realm of shadow, addiction, toxic attachments, and the terrifying lies we tell ourselves to stay safe. The fool hears whispers of "you belong to your fear," "you aren't good enough," "you'll never make it," "why even bother?" And the more the whispers intensify, the more the situation feels completely hopeless. The fool panics. They don't want to be stuck here. They don't want to be powerless. They know they have the inner strength to push through. They know they have the willpower to do the same. And so they do. They look around the room for an escape and notice something incredible. The loops around their necks are massive, loose, and wide. The chains are nothing but an illusion. All they have to do is lift them over their heads and walk away. At least that's what the fool thinks. They hum and haw, and the air grows warmer and thicker. And as the anxiety creeps up the back of their neck, they know they can't stay, so they try. They lift the collar from their neck over their head, and it clangs to the ground. And as the fool bolts for the exit, the devil smiles. He doesn't stop him, because the devil is the reclamation of our freedom. The fool runs from the cavern, finding a tower nearby, and slumps against the outer wall, pausing to catch their breath. Because even though they face their fears, they feel like things are crumbling. Things they thought they knew, they realize are false, are filled with holes and cracks. A violent crack of thunder splits the sky, and the fool jumps out of their skin. Fire erupts, and the fool sees figures tumbling head first out of the tower and onto the ground. The tower walls crumble into dust. It's violent and shaking and shocking. Everything the fool built to protect themselves from reality is shattered in a single moment. They thought they were safe. They thought they were invincible. But as the echoes of the crash fade and the smoke begins to clear, the fool finds themselves standing amidst the ruins, bruised and trembling, looking up from the rubble and ash. And there, in the sudden vast openness of the night sky, they see a bright, shining star. Without even thinking, the fool starts moving towards it, and they hear a gentle trickle of water. And they find a naked woman kneeling by a crystalline pool of water under a canopy of 8 brilliant, shimmering stars. With one pitcher, she pours water onto the fertile earth, and with the other, she pours it back into the pool. She is vulnerable and raw, but brings so much hope and renewal to the fool's fragile heart. They join the maiden in the water, and she is completely unbothered, smiling to welcome them in. They feel the cool, soothing wash of healing flow over their open wounds. And they realize that the tower had to fall so that the light of the star could finally reach them. And while they thought they felt it before, they understand now what true peace really is. And the fool begins to feel like they can trust themselves again. That inner light is returning. And so, guided by this inner starlight, the fool walks deeper into the midnight hours, stepping onto a narrow, winding path. They can see towers in the distance, a new land to explore, and they know that's the way they need to go. But the scenery becomes eerie and surreal. A giant silvery gold moon hangs low in the sky, casting shadows across their path that look like fingers and monsters out to get them. As the fool stumbles through, they come across a wolf on one side of the path and a dog at the other, one representing our instincts and the other our civilized minds. And the fool wonders, will either move to attack? They move gingerly between the two canines. The towers still loom in the distance, and while they once looked like a brand new opportunity, they now look ominous. The fool is unsure of which way to go. The shadows play tricks on their mind, and they can feel the anxiety lodged in their throat. But they take a deep breath, and they realize that they still have their own inner star, their own guiding light, their intuition, to help lead the way. And so they trust. So they continue to walk through the midnight, and just when the shadows feel like they will last forever, the dawn breaks. The sky bursts into a brilliant, radiant orange as the sun rises. The warmth is immediate, blindingly joyful, and absolute. The fool hears laughter in the distance, and they run towards it, finding a young, innocent child giggling on the back of a noble white horse. A red banner of victory flies through the air, and they're surrounded by tall, blooming sunflowers. The fool can see clearly. Every shadow from the moon is vaporized, and the fool feels a surge of vibrancy and energy. They feel reborn. And this isn't the first time in their journey they've stepped into a new energy. But this one's different. It's not the naive innocence they had at the beginning of the journey. It's not the shedding of old skins that they felt in death, or the complete collapse that the tower brought down. It's a conscious, wise, radiant joy. It's freedom and happiness. It feels like pure golden light. And the fool rides that energy all the way to the coastline, where the clouds grow heavy, and the fool can see stone coffins sitting on the riverbanks. Yet they do not feel scared. So the fool, too, lays down. A blinding light erupts from the cloud, and an angel emerges. They blow their horn, and the fool watches as figures rise from the coffins, arms opened wide in liberation. The fool, too, is compelled to do the same. And as they stand basking in the radiant light of the angel and the sound of the trumpet, they reflect back on their entire life, every mistake and detour, every heartbreak, and every lesson. And they can see the divine tapestry of it all. They forgive themselves, they see the patterns they've been repeating, and they set the resolution to absolve them of their past so they can answer their truer, higher calling. The old version of the fool is laid to rest, and they step into a higher spiritual evolution. They've learned now, they understand now more than they ever have. And it's through this evaluation that those lessons all come clear. And the fool follows the coastline to a brand new gate. At the entrance of a gate, they see a figure, wrapped in a scarf, dancing in the middle of a laurel wreath, holding two wands, one in each hand. The fool joins them. They dance and they celebrate. They integrate the lessons learned, the troubles surmounted, the fears conquered, and the intuition trusted. And for a moment, the fool feels complete. They feel like they've arrived, they are whole. They've traveled from the 0 of nothingness to the 21 of absolute wholeness. They are no longer, and nor were they ever, a victim of life. They are a master of it. They have integrated their mind, body, and spirit, dancing in total harmony with the heartbeat of the universe. The fool feels like they are home. But all things come to an end, and the music fades and the dance stops, and the fool itches to learn what lies beyond the gate. And as they rid their sack of the things they no longer need, a familiar white dog begins to bark, nipping at the edge of their heels. And so the fool begins again, a little older, a little wiser, but with still so much more to learn. And that, as I see it, is one version, maybe my version, of the fool's journey. From the beginning to the end and back to the beginning, this perpetual cycle that we're all a part of. And sometimes we don't go in order, and that's okay. So I hope you enjoyed this little journey with me. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this today is because I'm releasing a new Tarot Foundations course. It was supposed to be a mini course, but when it comes to me and tarot, nothing I can seem to do is mini. So it really is a Tarot Foundations course that takes you through the Major Arcana, the Minor Arcana, and gets you into reading the cards and hopefully trusting your intuition as you go. The course will be out on July 1st, and you can find it on thetarotlab.com. If you're hearing this before the 1st, you can sign up to get on the wait list. And if you're already a member of the Tarot Lab, this will be included in your membership too. But if understanding and exploring the tarot in fun new ways is something that you're totally down for, I'd love to see you in my course or as part of the Tarot Lab, because that's my jam. And if getting readings is more your thing, know that you can always book with me at adrianamari.com. But thank you, as always, so much for being here. And if you do anything this week, I want you to stop and think about your story. Where in the fool's journey are you? What lessons are you learning right now? Maybe it's one, maybe it's more than one. But either way, let me know. And hopefully I'll see you next week here on Beyond the Shuffle.